प्रेजेंटेशन खत्म करके रखना है ना, उसके या तुम अपने खुद शेयर कर दोगे फिर?
जी जी, नाउ वी आर गोइंग लाइव।
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. How are you? This is Syed Mohammed Shazib, Assistant Manager Marketing at HSEQ Professional. HSEQ Professional is a US-based firm having a head office in Texas, USA, and head office in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. We are a well-known company in the field of training, consultancy, and other technical services throughout the globe. A very warm welcome to you, all of you in this webinar, which is HACCP awareness. This HACCP awareness deals with management system and getting demand in organizational sector who wants to improve themselves with some international guidelines. You can write your question on YouTube chat column or on WhatsApp group during the webinar, and we will note down and ask the trainer at the end of the webinar. There is an exam end of the webinar. Only top 10 candidates will get free certificate with 100% marks and accurate time within 15 minutes. Please note that exam received after 15 minutes of time, then this will be not be entertained. Let's formally start the webinar, and I would request to trainer Mr. Shariar Ahmed to please start this webinar. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of HSEQ Professionals. And I would like to thank HSEQ Professional team to invite me in this very important session to speak on. And the topic of our session is HACCP. Let me start with my brief introduction first. This is Shariar Ahmed, and by qualification, I am Masters in Food Science and Technology from University of Karachi. I am certified and trained auditor for different quality and food safety standard, including ISO 22, FSSC, ISO 9001, HACCP, Halal, IFS. If talking about number of audits, I have performed more than 1,000 audits so far in different organizations against different standards. Apart from this, I'm also conducting audit against some second party standards like SQA, SQE, MAS. As far as my auditing experience is concerned, previously I worked in Pizza Hut, Pakistan as assistant manager QA. Before that, I was linked with one Italian certification body with the name of Rina Pakistan. And before that, I was linked with two different separate beverage industries with the name of Top Mountain Mineral Water and Aroma Distillers. So all over, I have experience of working in different industries of 12 years. So this is my brief intro. Let's understand the session norms. It is very important. Like always decide why are you spending your time on this training? What is the purpose of attending this session? What objective you will achieve after successful completion of this 1 hour? So let's like set the learning objective of this 1 hour session. The learning objective of this 1 hour session is overview of HACCP guideline. And in order to achieve this objective, we will cover 3 separate objectives. One is what is HACCP, other one is what is included in HACCP standard, and number 3 is 12 steps of HACCP. And this objective will be further divided into 2 parts. One is preliminary 5 steps of HACCP, and then we will discuss what are 7 principles of HACCP. So the main objective of this 1 hour session is to understand the overview of HACCP guidelines. And in order to complete that main objective, we will cover these 3 sub-objectives. Again, repeating, what is HACCP, what is included in HACCP standard, and number 3 is 12 steps of HACCP, which includes 7 principles of HACCP. Let's start with the objective number 1. And objective number 1 is what is HACCP? HACCP, which stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. And if you are working in any food industry, and if you are food professional, food expert, food scientist, or food technologist, this HACCP term is very common in a food industry. If you don't know what is HACCP, it means you are not able to work in any food industry, because HACCP is a prerequisite to work in any food industry. It's a basic standard for food safety. So it is very important to understand what is HACCP. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. And the definition of HACCP is a systematic preventive approach towards food safety that addresses hazards as a mean of prevention rather than a final product inspection. This is a definition. I will explain and I will define it in detail later on. My first question to all of you is, do you think that people did not used to eat safe food before HACCP? HACCP was introduced in 1969. And if you just Google that what is HACCP, you will find a one-pager information. I will recommend all of you to please read that basics and that history of HACCP. But in a nutshell, in a summarized way, I tell you that HACCP was basically developed by NASA, experts of Pillsbury, who is the supplier of NASA, and the American soldiers, American Army. So the union of NASA experts, Pillsbury experts, and US Army experts has developed these HACCP guidelines, and later on these HACCP guidelines are adopted by Codex Alimentarius Commission. This Codex Alimentarius Commission is a union, is a organization which work under UNO, United Nations Organization. There are two sub organizations of UNO, which is WHO and FAO. WHO means stands for World Health Organization, and FAO means Food and Agri Organization. So this Codex Alimentarius Commission consists of two sub-unions of UNO, WHO and FAO, and these HACCP guidelines are later on in 1997 adopted by this UNO, WHO and FAO. But after this history, the point is, what is the unique characteristic? What is the unique point and specification of this HACCP? Why HACCP is so powerful? Why HACCP is so beneficial? So that after 40 and 50 years, even now, all the food safety standards, either BRC, IFS, SQF, FISMA, they all have copied this HACCP guideline. So what was actually included in HACCP? So in order to basically, the answer is, do you think that people did not used to eat safe food before HACCP? The answer is no, because eating safe food is always in the nature of mankind. It is not like that HACCP has introduced to eat safe food, but HACCP has given some unique concept. And what was that concept? I tell you now. In this picture, you can see there are two diagrams, there are two figures. One is on the left side, another one is on the right side. The left side, the left picture is showing the practice of an industry, and on right side of the picture, right picture is based on HACCP principles. What is actually the difference? The conventional practice of an industry includes GMP. They also work on GMP practices. They also work on hygiene, sanitation control, and they have the end line product inspection and testing. Whereas HACCP-based system giving the concept of continuous monitoring and CCP control. What does it mean? It means that HACCP talks about continuous monitoring of raw material, processing line, just a second. Okay, I think, am I audible or not? Let me share the screen again. Okay, where were we? We were discussing the concept which was introduced by the HACCP. So anyone who asks you about the difference between HACCP-based system and non-HACCP-based system, the answer should be that HACCP talks about continuous monitoring. After each step, if you are receiving raw material, so right after receiving the raw material, your check and balance, your quality control, and your quality assurance activities should start. And that is what HACCP talks about. Whereas a non-HACCP-based system or conventional-based system talks about the quality checking, quality assurance check, and the parameters to verify either the final product is safe for consumption or not. It's only done at the final stage. So that is basically the difference between. So I repeat my definition once again in order to understand quite clearly. HACCP is a systematic preventive approach. It's a preventive standard. Talks about final inspection. HACCP is a systematic preventive approach towards food safety that addresses hazards as a mean of prevention rather than a final product inspection. So that is actually the main concept which was introduced by HACCP in 1969. Now, After this understanding, we are going to move on our objective number 2, that what is included in HACCP. Okay, HACCP, if you see on left top, you will see that CAC RCP 1 1969 is written. So CAC means Codex Alimentarius Commission, and RCP means Recommended Code of Practices. That standard was introduced in 1969, and currently it is present in its revision 4, which was issued in 2003. So this is actually the standard of the HACCP. So if you want to comply this standard in your organization, if you want to conduct audit against this standard, you have to Google it and download this standard for your further auditing or compliance. Now, what is included in the HACCP? You can divide HACCP standard into two parts. One is GMP and other one is HACCP 12 steps. If you understand these 2 points, it means you understand the HACCP standard. GMP means GMP includes different type of basic hygienic practices, basic those basic points which we normally do in our kitchen, which we normally do in any industry, and these are also the common practices of the industries, which includes personal hygiene, pest control, waste management, cleaning and sanitation, maintenance, environmental hygiene, design and facilitation, storage and transportation. So these are the basic controls of any industry. You cannot go for HACCP 12 steps. You cannot go for CCPs. You cannot go for advanced techniques until and unless you have these basic controls in your system. So for a food expert, for a food auditor or consultant, if any company is in a very basic level, and if they want to go for any food safety standard, always recommend them to go for GMP, because GMP is a first step, initial step. When you have proper first step or pillar or basic thing, then you have good in a position to comply HACCP 12 steps. Otherwise, uh, if pillar is not good, it means the building is not good. You can see that there is a cross in this slide. It means that we are not going into the details of GMP, because it's again a very lengthy topic to cover, and I have only 45 minutes to cover my HACCP, the things regarding HACCP. So we will cover this GMP points in some other training. So we are skipping this GMP. But for your understanding and recall, HACCP is divided into two parts. One is GMP, another one is HACCP 12 steps. Just for a brief overview, we understand that HACCP includes these type of GMPs, and now we are skipping GMPs, and we will cover details of GMPs in some other training. Now moving on to the objective number 3. And objective number 3, as I already mentioned in the start of my presentation, that we can divide this objective into two parts. One is preliminary steps of HACCP, and the second part is principles of HACCP. Now, what does that mean? In total, there are 12 steps of HACCP. I repeat, in total, there are 12 steps of HACCP. First 5 steps, from step number 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5, right? From assemble HACCP team to on-site confirmation of flow diagram. These steps are called preliminary steps, steps that comes before the HACCP principles. So these are 5 steps. And after 5 step, 5th step, the 6th step is hazard analysis, and list hazards, conduct hazard analysis, consider control measure. In short, it is hazard analysis, and it goes till step number 12. So if you count from step number 6 to step number 12, it will make 7 steps, and these 7 steps are called principles of HACCP. So we will discuss in detail all these principles and preliminary steps. It's very difficult word to pronounce. Okay, so these are preliminary steps, these are principles of HACCP. So I have already discussed this. Now come to the first step, that is assemble a HACCP team. What do you need to do in order to comply the first step of HACCP. First, you need to identify the personals from the organization. Those personals should be multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary means you need to select employees or staff from different departments. Uh, like you cannot like take 3 or 4 persons from the same department and make the audit team. No, you have to select proper team, and that team should depict from different departments of the organization. That is the first requirement. Second is that team should have specific knowledge. That specific knowledge includes two things. One is the proper knowledge of HACCP, like what is HACCP, history of HACCP, what is the unique concept of HACCP, what is included in the HACCP. So this knowledge should be present in the HACCP team members. Number two is the knowledge of their process flow. So two knowledge required. One is what is the process knowledge, processing required in the organization, what is the process flow of the organization, uh, product knowledge, process knowledge, and other one is the standard knowledge. And what standard is HACCP. So if a staff, if a member has these two competence, he or she is eligible to be a part of HACCP team, right? So this is the second point. One is that staff members, HACCP team members should be multidisciplinary. Another one is that members should have proper generic knowledge of the HACCP and specific knowledge of the process. If they have these two knowledge, these two competence, then he or she is eligible for and capable to be a part of HACCP team. Then the third point is you have to select a team leader of HACCP team who has some specific responsibilities to manage a complete HACCP team, to provide trainings to the HACCP team, to align documents, to align records. So there is a specific responsibilities of a HACCP team leader. So out of 2, 3, 4, or 5 members, whatever number of team members you want to select, but after making the audit team, you need to select one team leader. And the reason is that team leader has some special responsibilities to perform. After that, the fourth point for step number one, that is assemble a HACCP team, you need to like identify and hold responsibilities, some responsibilities of the HACCP team members. After this, this is a blank sheet for your reference, for your understanding, that this type of format you can make for the compliance of first step, that is assemble a HACCP team. In first step, in first column, it is a serial number. The second column is name. You have to identify the name of a person. Then you have to identify their departments. Then you have to identify the competence, that why this member is a part of this team. So in this column, you have to write the specific knowledge. Don't write that he has done BBA or any accounts related training. You have to write here the specific competence. On the basis of that, he is a part of this team. So you can write that he has a 1 day or 2 days HACCP course training. He's a lead auditor. His qualification, about his qualification, that he's masters in food science or bachelor's in food science or microbiologist or applied chemist. So all related competence you can write here, which ensure that he is capable for the part of this team. And in last column, you have to identify the responsibilities, specific responsibilities, in order to confirm that he what like responsibilities he has to ensure that HACCP system is in compliance with Codex Alimentarius. After this is the filled form for your reference, and I hope you already have this presentation with you. In this presentation, in this slide, I have given one example that what should we write in each column. So this is all about step number 1. Now we are moving towards step number 2. After completion of step number 1, we are moving towards step number 2. And step number 2 is describe product. What is product description? In this step, just a second. Okay, in this step, we need to understand that we have to describe the characteristics of our product, specification of our products, and this is very important. Question may arise in our minds that why it is a need of describing product. It is important because in later step, in step number 6, which is principle number 1, which says hazard analysis, we cannot go for hazard analysis, we cannot go for risk assessment, which is step number 7 of principle number 2, until and unless we define properly step number 2, 3, and 4 and 5. Step number 2 is product characteristics. If we do not have proper product characteristics, we cannot identify the risk of our product and our process in later step, which is step number 6 and 7. So this step is very important. This is the initial step. That is why it is called preliminary steps, the steps which comes before HACCP principles. So try to explain, try to identify and determine each point with focus, because again, if you do not properly define these steps, you do not have proper risk assessment and hazard analysis in later steps. So in product characteristics, what you have to define? You have to define physical characteristics, chemical characteristics of a product, biological characteristics of a product. Then you have to define what packaging is being used for the packaging of your final product. Then you have to define storage condition, what is the best storage temperature required for the product. Then shelf life, which is directly proportional to the storage condition, because it is based on the storage condition. If you say that the temperature should be in between 15 to 25 degrees centigrade, then the shelf life will be based on that temperature. If you violate that temperature, shelf life will be reduced. So you have to validate the shelf life based on the packaging material and storage condition characteristics. Then you have to define applicable legal requirements. There are 2 points here. The company, if it is in any country, so you have to abide by and comply with that requirement. And if your product is being sold in different part of the world, then you have to define what legal requirements are applicable in that country regarding your product. So you have to mention here all the legislations which are applicable to your product. And the main thing is the point of sale. If your product is being sold in European country, then you have to define all those legislations which are applicable in Europe related with your product. And the point 8 is intended use. Intended use is our step number 3. Yes. If you see, step number 3 is identify intended use. So you can make one more row and define the intended use of the product. Intended use is what? You have to define what is the purpose of my product, what is the target like consumer of my product. And again, on the basis of this intended use, you can properly conduct hazard analysis and risk assessment. For example, if your product is for children, for vulnerable population, then the risk will become high. But if your product is for normal people, young people, then the risk of that material will become low. So you have to define the intended use and also instructions for use. For example, if the product is like cooking oil, that it means that this cooking oil is not used for direct consumption. You cannot drink cooking oil. The intended use of this cooking oil is to fry different products. So when you write this, it means that cooking oil is not for direct consumption. And again, in later steps, we will be able to do the risk assessment and hazard analysis properly. This is again the filled form of step number 2 and 3 both, because step number 2 is product characteristics and step number 3 is intended use. So this is the filled form. This is for your reference. So have a look, and then we will move on to our next slide. I hope I'm not going fast. What are the messages? The meaning of HACCP is management system in which food safety is addressed. So I think I will cater all the question in the end of my presentation. Okay, after done with step number 3, we are moving identify intended use. We have already covered. So let's move on quickly. The cooking oil projected uses to be boiled, cooked, and consumed. No restriction use for any age group. Okay. Moving on to step number 4, that is construct a flow diagram. This is again very important, because if we do not construct and develop a flow diagram, then again we will not be able to conduct hazard analysis, because in step number 6 we have to conduct hazard analysis for each step. So the step number 4 says identify each step, right? So you have to develop process flow diagram and try to construct a detailed process flow diagram, which includes all the process steps, all your raw materials, all your rework processes, all your waste processes. So try to construct a detailed process flow diagram. So this is the example of one process flow diagram: raw material receiving to cooling. This is again another example of a rice processing industry. We receive rice, and then it goes for inspection, unloading, transfer to hopper, dust cleaner, destoner, then gravity reel, thickness grader, and finally packaging. If you can see, I have mentioned the all raw materials, which is rice and packaging material. I also mentioned one process for rework, and then also mentioned where the waste is going out. So after done with step number 4, we have successfully understood what is HACCP, what is how to make product description, how to identify intended use of the product. Then we have constructed a flow diagram as well. The step number 5 talks about on-site confirmation of flow diagram, right? It's a normal practice, because it's been 10 to 12 years for me to conduct audits in different industries. It's a normal practice that what you write in a document, it actually contradict with your practice. All your documents, all your plans, policies should be aligned with your current practices. And in order to comply, in order to match and align your documents, for flow diagram, standard says, HACCP step 5 says that all HACCP team members should go on site and verify the accuracy of that flow diagram. So all team members, if for example there are 5 team members in a HACCP, in a food safety team, all 5 team members should go on site. It's not required to go at one go. They can go separately in different times, but they have to go. They have to verify each and every step of the process flow and make some record, because auditor during audit asks that show me the record of the verification of process flow diagram. So you have something to show the auditors that on this date this team member has verified the flow diagram. So this is the step number 5, that all team members should go on site and verify the accuracy of process flow diagram. In this way, we have covered the first 5 steps of HACCP, right? So just a quick recall that HACCP is actually a combination of 2 parts. One is GMP, another one is HACCP 12 steps. In very short, I explained that GMP includes personal hygiene, all like cleaning and sanitation, pest management, cross prevention from cross contamination, waste management. So the GMP is actually a basic hygiene practices of our industry, and it's the initial step. We haven't covered in detail because it's again a very detailed topic, and I already told you that we will cover it in some other training. After this, I have started with HACCP 12 steps, and in HACCP 12 steps, I also divided HACCP 12 steps into 2 parts. First 5 steps called preliminary steps, and then later 7 steps are called principles of HACCP. We have covered first 5 steps of HACCP. Now we are in a position to start principles of HACCP. So it's a very common question which is being asked by companies to the new like employee. How many principles of HACCP are there? So the answer is there are 7 principles of HACCP. It starts from step number 6 and ends at step number 12. So step number 6 says conduct a hazard analysis, right? Step number 6 is hazard analysis, and step number 7 is identify CCP, which also means risk assessment, because you cannot identify CCP if you do not conduct risk assessment. So in other words, identifying CCP means to conduct a risk assessment. So there are two terms, hazard analysis and risk assessment. So my question, which I always ask to my students when I conduct this training face to face, that what is the difference between hazard analysis and risk assessment? Hazard analysis is to identify all the potential hazards in your process flow, in your product, right? Hazard analysis means to identify all potential hazards, either it's low risk or high risk, but identify all the potential hazards. uh, just for your understanding, hazards means those things, those contaminants which can make your food harmful for the consumer. And in technical words, in HACCP, hazards are of 3 types: physical hazard, chemical hazard, and microbial hazard. So in this step, you have to identify all the hazards which can be potentially come in your process flow in your product. Whereas risk assessment means to identify the impact of those hazards, to identify the intensity of those hazards. And like risk assessment is a technical part, hazard analysis in which you have to randomly identify all the hazards, either it is low or high, but identify it. But when you come in step number 7 or principle number 2, now you have to be more critical, you have to be more technical, and you have to adopt some methodology, technique and methodology for identifying the risk of that particular hazard. So we are at step number 6 and we have to identify hazard. For example, this is the same flow diagram which I have shown in step number 4. It's a rice processing flow chart, and in each step from arrival of rice to packaging of rice, in each step you have to identify what physical hazard can come in this process, what chemical hazard can come into this process, and what microbial hazard can come into this process. And again, uh, you do not have to think about either it's low or high. You have to identify or determine all the potential hazards here, right? For example, this one, this is again a format, not a standard format. It's a format made by me. So don't think that it's a format and you have to make a format like that always. This is again just for your understanding, that receiving of water, hazards are physical, chemical, or microbial, and then you have to identify what potential hazards can come in this process. Step number 2 is carbon filter, and again you have to write something in column number 2 and 3. After identifying all potential hazards in your process flow, step number 6 is determine critical control points, and in other words, it means risk assessment. I repeat that you cannot identify critical control points randomly, hypothetically. It has to be conducted, it has to be done or developed through some methodology. And there are different methodologies. Like if you Google it, you will find different types of methodologies. HACCP doesn't restrict you to adopt any one or two methodology. Uh, if you Google it, you will find decision tree, uh, severity and likelihood, fishbone diagram, FMEA mode. So there are different types of techniques which you can adopt in order to identify risk assessment. And you can even adopt your own, develop your own some methodology, but it should be justified. It should have some logical approach, right? So the most common methodology in order to identify the CCP is severity and likelihood, right? Severity means the impact of that hazard. And likelihood means uh, frequency of that hazard, in which like the product can become unsafe to use. So you have to make some scale to give some rating for severity and likelihood. Like again, physical, chemical, and microbial hazard you have already identified in step number 6. You just have to copy here in column number 1, in column number 2, which is severity, and column number 3, likelihood. You have to put some rating, and again you have to provide some justification of that severity, justification of that likelihood, because auditor will challenge that why you mentioned and indicated number 3 here as severity or likelihood. Why not 2? Why not 1? Why not 4? You have proper justification for that. And after providing and putting some numbers below the severity and likelihood, you have to multiply those numbers and like mention under risk. Then you have to make some scale that again based on what is the lowest limit and what is the highest limit. You have to mention that after 6 it will be considered as our CCP, and if it is below 6 it will be considered as OPRP, and it's below 2 it is considered as PRP. It's all up to you. It is not written somewhere that this has to be followed. It's all up to your wish, it's all up to your will. But again, you have to justify everything. Okay, already discussed. This is also called risk assessment. You have to provide some scale, and this is the example of that scale. Okay, after identifying CCP, now the next step, step number 8, which is principle number 3, is to establish critical limits for CCP. What is critical limits? Critical limits means, first of all, what is CCP? CCP is that point which is like mandatory to have control at that point. It is mandatory to have controls at that point. Is called CCP. But if the product is passed through CCP without any control, it means the product can be unsafe for consumption. So when you identified that step is critical control limit, mandatory step to control. Now the next step is to identify the critical limit for that CCP, and critical limit means to identify the lowest and highest limit. In between that, the product is safe, and if violates the limits, it means our product will become unsafe. Whenever you decide the limit, critical limit for CCP, you need to validate, you need to justify. Validation is a very common term being used in food industries. Validation means justification for that limit. For example, if we say that the pasteurization of milk is in between 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. Our milk is safe between 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. The auditor will ask, why not 69 and why not 81? So again, the justification is that we have read somewhere, not somewhere, we have read in that dairy technology book, or this is the research of Mr. XYZ, that milk is safe and all pathogenic microorganisms will be eliminated from milk if we heat the or pasteurize the milk between 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. Before 70 degrees centigrade, the microorganisms will remain present in milk, and after 80, microorganisms will be eliminated, but quality of milk will be reduced. So the best temperature is 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. This is what? This is the justification of keeping the limit between 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. So whenever you decide some limits for your critical control points, you have to provide a justification for that. After identifying critical limits, next step is to provide the monitoring procedure for that critical limits. Your task is not finished after setting the critical limits. The next step is more important, and that is, how do we monitor the critical limit? How do we monitor that our product is in the limits, not exceeding the limits? So in monitoring, you have to define 4 things. What is being monitored, when or frequency of monitoring, how it is like being monitored, and who is responsible for this monitoring. So you have to write the answers of these 4 questions. And when you write the answers of these 4 questions, it means you have defined the monitoring method and monitoring procedure for your critical limits. Next step is verification. People often confused in between these 3 terms: verification, monitoring, and validation. What comes first? Validation is the first step, because validation is what? Is a justification for doing anything. Is a justification for your planning. For example, if I decide that the frequency of cleaning is of this room is twice a day, again anyone like auditor will challenge, why 2 times, why not 3 times, and why not 1 time? So I will justify through some like research or through testings that this is the reason why we have made the frequency of cleaning of this room twice a day. So this is the justification and validation. So validation is the first step. The second step is monitoring. When we decide that this room should be cleaned twice a day, the second step is to regular check of the cleaning of this room, right? So monitoring, the synonym or definition of monitoring is regular check. And the third step is verification. Verification means ultimate satisfaction, and verification can be done through 2 means. One is through testing, any laboratory testing, and other one is like remonitoring of a monitoring activity is also a verification. That is the reason why you have seen certain records in your organization. If you belong to some organization, you can see that there are 2 things mentioned in your records. One is checked by and verified by. What does this verified by means? Verified by this means that some HOD or some other person has remonitored the activity of that monitoring activity, and that is the reason why he is verifying that this monitoring activity is being done. So these are 3 things: validation, monitoring, and verification. So after monitoring, come to the again HACCP. After monitoring, just a second, let me check the messages. Okay. After monitoring, you have to remonitor that activity, and someone from the organization, it's better to be a HOD of that like department, re-verify or re-monitor the activity, uh, and mention here in this chart that who is responsible for the verification and what will be the frequency of verification. And again, the second mean of verification is through microbial testing. I give another example, like we have discussed about the pasteurization of milk. So the verification may be through microbiological testing of that milk. Remonitoring is one way, is an easiest way, but yes, you can also verify the ultimate satisfaction of your product through microbiological testing of your product. It can be done through your internal lab or through some external laboratory. After verification, you need to establish the correction and corrective action procedure of your CCP. And what does that mean? Correction and corrective action means, first of all, correction means to solve the in-hand problem, and corrective action means an action to eliminate a root cause of detected non-conformity in order to stop its reoccurrence, right? Now you have to mention here the procedure reference of your document, because this CCP is a critical control point, is a mandatory point to control. When critical limits are violated, it is very important for an organization to identify what do they do when critical limits are exceeded. When critical limits are exceeded, so there are 2 points they have to define. One is correction, that what is the immediate action when critical limits are exceeded, and what will be the corrective action when critical limits are exceeded. And you cannot write specific correction and corrective action like before the incident. That is the reason why you have to write here in a general way that we have the proper correction and corrective action procedure, and you can give the reference of that procedure. and also mention that we will take correction and corrective action whenever critical limits are exceeded. The final point is records and documents. There are different types of records you are going to maintain for monitoring, for verification, for correction and corrective action. There are different formats, so you have to list down and give the reference of those records here. So this is actually the CCP control plan, also known as HACCP plan. So if you have one CCP in your process, you have to mention, you have to make like this document for each CCP. If you have two CCPs, you have to separately make two HACCP plans and critical control plans separately for each CCP. One very important point: is that possible that after conducting risk assessment, there is no CCP in the process flow? The answer is yes. It may be possible that after proper conducting hazard analysis and risk assessment, it may be possible that there is no CCP identified in a process. And there are number of industries, low risk industries like packaging industry, uh, simple fruits and vegetable export industries. They do not have, normally they do not have any CCPs in their process flow. Whenever there is no CCP in the process flow, you do not need to make critical limits. You do not need to establish this HACCP study and HACCP plan, identifying monitoring, identifying verification, correction, corrective action, and records, because this chart is only applicable when CCP is there. When there is no CCP, you do not need to make, identify and develop critical limits, monitoring, verification, correction, corrective action, and records. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, the good news is, what is the good news? Uh, Now let me know. I think I cannot see the response from all the participants, because this is the online training. But we have covered step number 1, which is assemble a HACCP team. I must know that the answer is yes. Yes, we have covered assemble a HACCP team. We have covered product description, which is step number 2. Yes. We have covered identify intended use. The answer is yes. We have covered construct a process flow diagram, which is step number 4. Yes. Then we have covered verification of process flow diagram, which is step number 5. After that, we have started with principle number 1 and understood what is hazard analysis. And after hazard analysis, we also understood what is identify critical control points, and we have understood through there are different methods, different techniques through which we can identify critical control points. When there is critical control point, we have to identify and establish critical limits for that CCP. That is step number 8. After if there is CCP, then we have to identify critical limits for that CCP. We have to establish monitoring procedure for that CCP that we have covered in that chart has a plan. We have to establish and define correction and corrective action procedure that is also defined in that chart. And we have to establish verification procedure that was also included in that has a plan chart. And we have to establish records and give the reference of those records in that chart. So this is actually the learning objective of our training in this short session. We have covered what is HACCP. We have discussed what is included in HACCP standard, discussed that there are 2 parts in HACCP standard, GMP and 12 steps. And the final objective of that session, of this session, is 12 steps of HACCP, in which we have covered 7 principles of HACCP as well. So this is all from my side, and I think this is a time for.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you
Anas?
so much, Shahryar Ahmed.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for your explanation. Uh, then thank you so much for attending this webinar and taking the interest. Now it's time to ask your question with the trainer. Once, please write your question YouTube chat column on WhatsApp group during the webinar. Please write your question and YouTube chat column Then will Mr. Shariar Ahmed tell the answers.
Okay, one question I have received through WhatsApp is the difference between CCP and OPRP. Uh, First of all, OPRP is not a term being used in HACCP standard. This training is on overview of HACCP. This PRP and OPRP are the terms being used in ISO 22000. Here, PRPs are referenced and termed as GMPs. So this question is not related with this training. In some other training, I think when we conduct some training on ISO 22000, then I will explain the difference between PRP, OPRP, and CCP. So stick to this topic. Your question should be stick to this topic. Okay, sir. Critical limits always come from literature. Um Not literature. It means validation. Validation includes literature. It also includes like your own research, own study, own testings, and own environment, because risk depends on different factors: environmental factors, product nature, complexity of your process flow, complexity of your product, number of your products, competency of your personals. So there are different factors which make or separate or distinguish CCPs from one organization to another. Even the same organization, if it is in one part of the world, it has some different, it may have some different CCPs, and the same organization, if it is in another part of the world, they may have some other CCPs based on risk. It is not like you have to copy the whole CCP and has a planned documents to another company. And consultants, some consultants are doing this way, like they just copy and paste system from one organization to another, and this is not right way to comply with this HACCP standard. So risk should be based on validation, proper justification. Okay. Question number, next question is, okay, next question is again the main difference between OPRP, CCP, and OPRP. Uh, Again, this is not today's topic. Uh, in ISO 22000, I will answer this question. Meanwhile, I will recommend all of you to please join our YouTube channel with the name of QA Learning Hub, and you will find all the answers of those questions which you are writing it right now in that channel. So I repeat, QA Learning Hub. There are more than 100 videos in that channel, and you will find most of the answers of your QTs in that channel. Yes, kindly elaborate. No CCP limits in some industries. Uh, if I understand that like there are industries which may have no CCP based on risk. There are number of low risk industries in the food chain. First, understand what is food chain. Food chain means the processes, the activities which are included between farm to fork. So if you see, there are number of different low risk processing industries between this process flow or food chain. For example, uh, there are logistic firms which are picking up packed food products from the industry and delivering it to any retailer and any shop. So this logistic firm is very low risk, like processing or operational industry. So there might be no CCP in that system. But whenever there is no CCP in the system, in the process flow, there is no need of step number 8 to step number 12. There is no need of principle number 3 to principle number 7. You just need to like comply with step number 1 to step number 7. You can easily get certification for HACCP. What are the CCPs in the water treatment? This is sorry for my bad language. This is silly question to ask. Like sitting in a cold room, in a chilled room, and talking about CCPs. Again, you cannot identify CCP until unless you go in ground. You see the real environment of that industry. You see real risks of that industry. When you see the real risk of that industry, then you are able to identify the CCP. Otherwise, don't ask consultants, don't ask auditor, don't ask experts to tell me what are the CCPs in that industry, on that industry. This is like silly question to ask, and nobody will respond. uh, that's the answer of that question. Okay. Kindly elaborate. No CCP. What is the difference between CCP and OPRP? Same question. Can some factors involved in different HACCP milk and meat HACCP meet some condition, that is environmental pollution? Yes, already explained that there are different risks, and risk will be based on product nature, complexity of the process flow, your GMP conditions, your competency of employees, your infrastructure. If infrastructure is old, risk is high. If infrastructure is new, state of the art building, then the risk will become low. So these are the factors which you will consider when you will practically on site. So any other question? Okay. I hope I have answered all the queries. Thank you so much once again. And I will request all of you to please subscribe my channel as well with the name of QA Learning Hub. We have again uploaded more than 100 videos on different topics of food safety and quality. Once again, I would like to thank you, HSEQ team, professionals, that they have provided me this opportunity to speak on this very important topic. And thank you so much, all of you, for your patience. And goodbye. See you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shayyar Ahmed. Thank you so much for giving you precious time for HSE professional. Thank you so much. Now, thank you so much for everyone attending the webinar. We will now sharing the exam link in the webinar group. You will have 15 minutes to solve this exam and submit. Only top 10 candidate will get free certificate with 100% marks and accurate time. If you will get 50% and above in exam, so you can get the certificate of attendance with a minimum payment of USD equivalent. Good luck for your exam and see you soon in the next webinar training. Please provide your feedback on your Facebook page and don't forget to subscribe our channel YouTube for more informative source. Good night.